Victims are forced to serve several customers per day. When I mean by several, I'm being very nice there. I'm saying up to 30 a day. And live and sleep in the same room. Now we'll come back around and talk about that here in a little bit, as far as that being a red flag for possible being in a situation where you might be where these girls are. We'll come around and talk about that again. Some are simply set on the street and live by themselves in these cities. And they always come back. They've been broken, if you will, so much that they have no place to go. They're in a strange place, and they always come back to their controllers. And you think they wouldn't? You think they would run to the police? And that's why you see this particular crime so rampant in some other countries. And basically that's where you have rampant law enforcement corruption, or they simply don't care. May alternate dancing. They may alternate dancing and sex acts, whatever it's going to take to get them money. There's an international phrase known for these girls because we talk about the Russian girls being so popular in Europe, Israel, and the Middle East, and they're simply known as Natashas. Like we would say somebody is like John for just simple prostitution, they're given the blank slate name of Natashas. Again, that has that Russian feel to it because Russian girls are so popular in these countries. Mindset of victims. Again, as law enforcement officers, and what we teach our guys is they may not speak English. More likely than not, they don't. If they are foreign national, if they are an American citizen, snatched in Los Angeles and brought to Indianapolis, Terre Haute, or wherever, and obviously they will. But on an international level, they probably don't speak English, and that's important. And I'll tell you here later as we get through this. And they may be unfamiliar with the United States culture. Where they come from may not be the same culture that we're used to. Americans are a little bit arrogant in the fact that we think everybody acts and thinks like we do. And that's just the price we pay for being a superpower. And we have to realize that some of these girls don't think like that, and they don't have that type of culture. Distrust of outsiders, especially law enforcement. Fear of jail or deportation, simply from the lack of knowledge. If they don't know any better, and their handlers will drill this in their head. If you tell on me, you're going to jail with me. They do not identify themselves as victims and they blame themselves. And the really, really sad part, especially when you come from these southeast, southwest countries and even some of the Eastern European countries and Middle East countries, is as bad as their situation is, being a sex slave, it may be better than where they grew up. In the villages of Colombia, Venezuela, Syria. You know, if they're living in Dubai and they were living in Syria a year ago, they might think that where they're living in Dubai or Cairo or Moscow or whatever, Washington, D.C., what they're doing is certainly better than getting their heads chopped off by ISIS. A lot of their handlers will tell them, if you run away, we will simply kill your family. Again, these are violent, organized crime syndicates and individuals, and they know what they're doing. Now, whether that's an idle threat or not, the girls don't know. They're going to assume that it is a relevant threat. These are some of the things that we run into as far as law enforcement officers that may be red flags for involved in the original case. So I may be doing a search warrant on marijuana or methamphetamine or what have you, but I may stumble in one of these cases through some of these calls for service or investigations. Prostitution rings, operations of massage parlors and strip clubs, domestic abuse. Where's the most common place that human trafficking of American girls in American cities where we've done good and caught these guys and put them away? 9 times out of 10, they're domestic abuse calls where somebody calls where he's beating her because she didn't bring enough money back to the hotel, and the people in the next room calls, says there's a violent argument. What am I talking about here? And this is something you can use for your own private knowledge when you're traveling. Hotels. Vice raids where foreign nationals are encountered, that's pretty obvious. That would be a huge red flag for us in law enforcement. Encounters with migrant workers where the foreman or supervisor attempts to keep the group away from law enforcement officers or attempts to control the communication between the law officer and the group. We'll talk about that a little more, and you'll hear me say that again. That's a huge red flag. We'll talk about that here a little bit. Brawls between people, which is money is owed, which would go back to domestic violence in the hotel rooms. Crimes involving immigrant children in situations such as prostitution or forced labor. We run into this on I-70, our interdiction team here in Terre Haute. We have guys with Terre Haute PD that are trained in interdiction up on the highway to get drugs and money going back and forth. I mean, I-70 starts at Baltimore, ends at Salt Lake City. So it's a major vein through the heartland of America, through some major big cities. And our interdiction guys actually run into this every once in a while. We'll stop a car for a traffic violation. Again, their secondary investigation is drugs and money, but they run into, you'll have a van full of Hispanic people, and you'll have 1 or 2 adults and 6 or 7 children, and their story is, well, we're taking them to their mother. We just had one about a year ago, and their story was it was 3 adults, 4 children, and their story was that the adults were Mexican, the children were El Salvadoran, and their story was they were taking the kids to their mom in New York City. And we ended up just taking all the kids and put them in Terre Haute's Department of Children's Services. I mean, so you're taking the brunt of that financially also through tax money. So we just simply took these kids off the highway and dumped them into CPS here in Terre Haute. So we run into these situations through interdiction up on the highway. Again, we're looking for money and drugs, and we're finding El Salvadoran kids going to New York City. I don't really know how that played out.
How do you find where they live? Like, what do you do with these kids? You can't just leave them.
That's why we took them to CPS.
And then they find where they live and send them back?
I don't know.
Or
I don't know where they
do
went.
something.
I don't know. In that particular call, they had a phone number, a New York City phone number. They said, here, call the mom. So they called, and she said, yes, to bring our children, or bring my children to me. But I mean, that could have been pre-planned. If you get pulled over, call this number. So our guys didn't really buy it. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. So basically, if it was a plan, it didn't work. And if it wasn't legitimate, they were actually transporting these kids to New York City to see their mom. CPS was going to make the mom come here. And I don't know how that panned out. I went off to other things that I do.
Sorry.
The important, when you're up on I-70 at 2 o'clock in the morning, their goal is simply just get those kids to a safe place, and we'll work it all out later. That's just the way it is. We tell our guys to note the following. If they get a call and they start seeing red flags, what are their living conditions? What are their working conditions? What are the indications of restriction or movement? Are they allowed to leave the premises? Are they forced to make frequent moves? These are all little things that we try to ask them. We're trying to observe through our law enforcement senses and sight, smell, and hearing, and all that. Are there any behavioral indicators of severe dependency, submissive behavior, fearful behavior in the presence of others? Who's in physical possession of their legal documents and identification? That is huge. If one person is holding everybody's IDs or passports or their papers, if you will, that's a big red flag for us. Who insists on providing information to law enforcement? Are they in the country legally? And we get into some of this, and I'll come back around to it and explain why some of these are more important than others. Your victims aren't going to be cooperative. They're not going to sit there, and if you get a call of loud music and there's a house full of sex slaves in there, or trafficked children, or what have you, they're not going to go running in the arms of our uniformed police and say, thank God you saved me. It just doesn't happen like that. They've been conditioned, they've been trained, they've been beaten, stuff we already talked about. Again, they fear prosecution for crimes they committed in the past and immigration issues, and they fear their handlers. So we walk into a big room full like this, and there's 20 women in here of let's make it exotic and say Ukrainian women that have been brought to the United States for the purposes of sex slavery, they're not going to come running into the arms of our uniformed officers. We have resistant victims, and that's what we call them, resistant victims. And say, thank God you saved me, you big, strong policeman. It's just not happening. It doesn't happen. This is a situation that happened, I think in Massachusetts, where a simple uniform call for service. This wasn't an exotic investigation done by detectives or the FBI or Department of Homeland Security. This was a uniform call. I can't remember what the call was. But that officer noted something that made him take this investigation a step further instead of just saying, turn down the music, I'm out of here. Don't make me come back kind of thing. The thing was, is one person spoke for everybody and wouldn't allow him to talk to the other people in the house. That's a huge, huge red flag. If you have a dominant figure, male or female, probably most likely male, who insists on doing all the speaking for everybody else, that's a huge red flag for us in police work. Also, too many people living in a place that isn't designed to hold that many people. Big red flag. Just kind of a map of the world. This is probably about 3 years old, so this may have changed slightly, but the norms usually stay the same. There's not going to be huge. The red indicates a high number of people where they're taken, or tricked, if you will, to go from point A to point B for the purposes of sexual trafficking. Again, Africa. These countries in Africa. A lot of it is labor reasons. Again, Boko Haram and stuff like that. We do know that that's very, very common. You see Nigeria's a nice big fat red. There's Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia. All that getting big news right now with the Ebola outbreaks. And then, again, a world power, Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, all these girls, blonde hair, blue eyed. And they go, these Middle Eastern countries, these countries here, because they absolutely love them.
The striped countries, does that mean that they're being taken and given to the same
It's a mix. It's where India, China, they're mostly being trafficked within their own borders, although they're getting a lot of girls from Eastern Europe. India is also a big country where you see a higher percentage of forced labor also.
So the United States is a very high number of people per destination, primarily workforce, I'm assuming.
46% sex. And again, you got to take half of that 46 and know they're under the age of 18. And we're talking about girls all the way down to the age of 2 or 3, for that special conversion client, if you will. These are questions we ask our victims. If we think that we have a human trafficking situation in law enforcement, again, this is what we're teaching our Terre Haute police officers. These are the questions that we ask our victims. And there's one question that you think we would obviously ask right away that we do not. I'll get into that here in a second. Because you're probably seeing this going, why aren't you asking them this particular question? And we particularly avoid it right away, or to ask that question right away. What type of work do you do? Are you being paid? Can you leave your job if you want to? Can you come and go as you please? Have you or your family been threatened? And the big one is, do you sleep where you work? If they sleep where they work, that's a big red flag for us. And that investigation is going to continue. Again, you kind of see the poster there where this non-governmental agency who specializes in human trafficking are trying to put the word out there that some of these work companies, employment companies in other countries are really not what they seem. What are your working and living conditions like? Do you have to ask permission to eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom? That's a big one. This is pretty obvious, and you would think that they wouldn't do this, but they do. Are the locks on the doors or windows so you can't get out? Are the locks on the wrong side of the door, basically? That's something we teach our guys to look for. And again, you'll hear me say this probably again. Has your ID or documents been taken from you, and where are they right now? Does one particular person have those documents, your ID, your passport, the country of origin, identification, anything like that? Are you afraid of anybody? Again, these seem like very common sense questions, but they all are part of the puzzle that we have to develop to prove this crime of human trafficking. Because again, our victims are probably going to be resistant. They're not going to tell us the truth. So we have to ask all these little peg questions to put that puzzle together. And this is the one question we never ask at the beginning of an investigation. Do you think would be the obvious one? Are you a slave? Are you being held against your will? Are you being sex trafficked? Are you forced to have sex with men over and over and over for little or no money? The reason why we don't ask that right away is 9 times out of 10, like I just said, the resistant victims are going to tell us no. No victim, no crime, we go away. In some cultures, the definition of slave doesn't exist, so they won't understand what you're saying. They're not understanding what you're asking them. So they'll tell you no. You don't understand something, especially if you're talking to a cop, you simply say no. So again, that's the one question that we avoid that you'd think would be the first one we'd ask for this very reason. If they say no, you don't have a victim, United States, there's rights and Constitution and all that, no victim, no crime, we go away. Some may be too embarrassed to answer truthfully. Again, like I said, no victim, no crime. Just to give you an idea of how prevalent this is in Hong Kong, and that pink sign there, I've got in quotations, I'll just let you read it. And that's what that sign says. And to tell you how good we are in American law enforcement, you would never see that sign on the city of New York City, Los Angeles, Terre Haute, Indiana, Detroit, or whatever, because they know they'd have a bunch of cops kicking at their doors.
Those countries just don't have any laws whatsoever.
They just don't care. It's not a
Look
problem.
the
It's
other
not a
way.
priority.
They never bust anybody, so.
They may. What happens is, in areas like India, what happens is you have non-governmental agencies. One of them, if you want to go to their website, is IJM.org. IJM.org. It's a very Christian-based organization. It's headed off by a former United States federal prosecutor. It's a very, probably one of the best human trafficking organizations. They'll actually send undercover guys in, former cops. They'll go in there and get it on these brothels and stuff, especially young kids. They'll take it back to the police. Police will come in there and do it. If these countries are forced to, because they'll be embarrassed if they don't, they'll act. But 9 times out of 10, they'll operate entire small towns in Southwest Asia. It's just the whole town's a giant brothel. And if you do your research, IJM actually did an investigation on that. It was actually like on 60 Minutes or something like that. But if you go to IJM.org, they'll tell you everything they do. It's a really, really good organization. Again, human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, will flourish in countries where the the police can't handle it or won't handle it. And that's just the nature of the beast, the way it is.
What about where prostitution is legal in some countries?
Then they'll have girls that will do it on their own, simply to make money.
Right.
But the concept of being trafficked is still a law enforcement issue. If they're there against their will, well, that's the main thing. Are they there in a country like, you're talking about Amsterdam?
Yeah, exactly.
Amsterdam has a very, very good human trafficking because they don't want their legitimate prostitution tainted. They don't want that reputation. So they try to keep the human trafficking aspect of it pretty clean. They have a pretty good human trafficking.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah. Because they don't want some kid from the United States or Great Britain or Australia going there thinking, you know, I'm fine with having sex with a prostitute who's there because she wants to be. I'm not fine with having it with the girl who's not there. Now, whether their mindset gives that, but they don't want that reputation. So they have a pretty good human trafficking unit there. Types of hostages taking. This is something that might be a little bit more relevant for you if you're traveling abroad or even in the United States, if you will. What's the difference between a kidnapping and a trafficking? What are the differences? Some are political, some are for money. If it's for money, it could be either or. If I kidnap somebody because I want to make them a sex slave, it's for money. If I kidnap them because I want to make or send a message to the United States government, so I chop off your head, that's obviously political. The advantages and disadvantages of being a U.S. citizen can be both good and bad. The problem with being a United States citizen is if you go to these poor countries where this problem is rampant, especially Mexico and Central South America, they think every U.S. citizen is a millionaire. They see our TV shows, they think we're all rich. So they think every one of us is worth $1 million. So you're targeted because they think all of our families are rich because they live in grass huts and they see our TV shows, they see how, you know, I couldn't give you an example, but our sitcoms and stuff like that, they think we're all millionaires. So you will automatically be targeted if they figure out you're a U.S. citizen because they think you're rich. The advantages of being a U.S. citizen are there are certain things in play that our State Department, U.S. government will click in once information makes it back to federal authorities that you have been taken. First thing they're going to do is they're going to go to your family and you say, we want you to sign away your Fourth Amendment rights so we can tap your phone. So every time you get a phone call, it gives the U.S. government permission to record it and talk to these people. And believe it or not, as a U.S. citizen, you have to do that, or we won't do it. Now you would think, I absolutely would do that. My mother, my father, my son, my daughter's been kidnapped. That's a no-brainer. Get in here, give me the paper. You'd be surprised how many people won't. And who do you think doesn't? Really rampant in southwestern United States. One drug trafficker kidnaps another drug trafficker's family member, and they don't want the United States government listening to phone calls because it's still business as usual, so they write off that family member. Places to be extra alert, whether you're traveling in the United States, but especially internationally. Airports. If you are from the United States and they figure that out by your clothing, by your demeanor, by your accent, you've already been targeted once you are walking through that. Somebody's already looked at you. If you fly into Bogota, Colombia, or Mexico City, somebody in that airport has already looked at you. You have an example?
I lived in Mexico City for about 9 months, and we had number one, ransom insurance was taken out on us.
Sure.
Through Sony, and we could not leave our hotel without our bodyguard. And anytime we drove, whether it be to a restaurant, to the mall, to the office, there was always a car in front, a car in back, and our car. And we always jumped because they didn't want you to know. They didn't want anyone to know which car we were in.
Right.
And regardless of what the temperature was, we always had to have our windows up.
Yep.
And we weren't allowed
Windows
to crank them down. Yeah. The first place they took us every time we landed was to the U.S. Embassy to show us where it was at.
Sure, absolutely. It's a shame it has to be that way, but it is. Do you think Mexico is being this huge drug trafficking country, and it absolutely is? $30 billion a year go from across that border of the United States to Mexican drug cartels. $30 billion a year. That's exactly the same number that the Mexican oil companies do. Is $30 billion a year, and they got a lot of oil in Mexico. Yeah,
What about the vacation places like Cancun and that? Is that safe now?
I wouldn't go to Mexico at all. That's just me.
Okay.
Mexico, basically, when you go to Cancun or something like that, one of these resort areas, or you're basically an island.
Yeah.
You're basically resorting on an island, surrounded by shit.
Yeah.
Be careful of your taxi companies. A lot of them will work hand in hand. The taxi drivers will take money from kidnapping organizations to report the fact, hey, I got an American in here, I'm taking him to this hotel. And then they'll describe you. And these kidnapping organizations will watch that hotel and watch you come and go and watch your routine. And then if they feel like they can safely, for lack of a better phrase, make a move on you, they certainly will. Smartphones, if you think you're being followed, does everybody have a smartphone? Use that screen. Your smartphone screen makes an excellent, especially daylight, where you're looking like you're taking a selfie and these things will reflect and see right behind you. It's almost about 50% of what a beer will do, 40 or 50%. So you can walk down the street and you can use your cell phone in daylight, walk down the street to see who's behind you. And you can even snap a picture nowadays. Selfie. Or you certainly look like you're snapping pictures constantly. This individual, cell phone touch. Windows up when you're traveling from point A to point B, like she just said. Even though it's a very thin pane of glass, it's still a barrier. And the longer it takes them to snatch you off the street, the more exposed they are, and most likely either help can come, or they simply go, I've taken up too much time here. Even though it's just a thin pane of glass, it's still a barrier that they have to get through to get to you. Random versus routine. Like she said with the cars, how they never the same, always moving. If they are watching you, they're going to watch you. If you do the same thing every day, if you go to Starbucks down the corner every single morning at 9 a.m., they're going to note that, and they're going to make a plan around that specific routine. So keep things random. Go to a different place. Go somewhere else. Alternate your times. If you are taken, can you be a good hostage? I know it sounds silly, but stay calm. Be passively cooperative. Don't be hostile. Don't be overly friendly. Be passively cooperative. Observe what's going on. What are their daily routines? Because you may be held for months. What noises do you hear? What are you eating? Is this a professional group or a bunch of amateurs? If you're eating halfway well and you're not losing pounds a week, then obviously you might be dealing with some professionals because they know what they're doing. If they're treating you poorly, if they're not feeding you well, odds are this is a very poor group trying to make money, and you might be in a little more danger. The rescue. If somebody comes for you, whether that's law enforcement or anybody else to rescue you, just hit the ground. Unless you're on fire, unless the room you're in is on fire, hit the ground. Your rescuers will tell you exactly what to do. Don't ad-lib. Don't start running, screaming, trying to jump out windows or anything like that. Hit the ground. Unless that room is on fire, hit the ground. Your rescuers, especially if it's an American unit, are the best in the world, and they're going to get to you, they're going to save you, or they're going to die trying. This is a method or a concept developed by an Air Force colonel several years ago. Some people say it's outdated, but it's pretty basic, so you really can't mess with basic. It's called the OODA loop. When you will do this every day. You do this OODA loop when you walk into this room. When you came in this room, you observed the room, you oriented yourself to it, you decided where to sit based on where other people were sitting, and you acted on that. You sat in that chair. Okay, you do this all the time. This is little skills that you already have that you didn't know that you had, that you can incorporate to keeping yourself and your family protected. If you walk outside of a hotel or in a park, even if you're in Terre Haute, at every park, and you observe something, you're going to orient yourself to that fact of this person's doing something that's out of context. You're going to decide what to do. I'm going to walk back to my car and get in, start the engine, and move away, and you act on that. You do this all the time. It's called the OODA loop. And you can use that when you're traveling abroad or wherever, if you think you're in a dangerous situation. Okay, we're done.
Any questions? Thoughts?
I'm not good.
It's hard to process.
I know there are good groups, though. Our church has had some young people go out with different organizations that go in and try to rescue these girls. And I think Joyce Meyer Ministries, I mean, she talks about the one she helps support, they actually go in and try to buy a truckload of girls. Like they're going to, I think she told me on video that they were going to sell this truckload of girls for $3,000. to whoever was gonna buy them, so the good organization was gonna buy them and get them rehabilitated.
If I had a bunch of healthy young girls, 3,000, I could make that in 2 hours. I'm not saying it's not impossible, that everybody do that. But if and odds are that is a very low-level amateurish group that they're buying these people from. It doesn't make them any less dangerous, probably more dangerous. So they're probably actually doing a service. But they're dealing with a professional, organized group of individuals who do this for a living. They can make $3,000 in 2 hours on these girls, easy. So odds are that was a group of, the group that they're dealing with selling the girls, they're just doing quick, easy cash.
Yeah.
Like your street corner marijuana dealer, boom, 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 boom. Now that doesn't make them any less dangerous. Actually, I would say the non-professional amateurs are probably more dangerous than the professional groups. Because the professional groups know that these girls can make them hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And then these guys just go for the quick cash. And they panic quicker too, the amateur groups. They panic quicker and they see something they don't like, they just may throw a grenade in the truck and off they go.
So is that ministry group in danger by doing that?
Is the group in danger?
Uh-huh.
Anytime you're dealing with
Yeah.
these groups, whether they're amateurs or professionals, these are violent people.